The ultimatum. Captain Elena Reyes stood on the observation deck of the orbital station Horizon Watch, her dark eyes scanning the star-filled void beyond the reinforced viewing panels. The coffee in her hand had gone cold an hour ago, but she barely noticed. Something felt wrong. After 15 years of service in Earth's Space Monitoring Division, she had learned to trust her instincts. The communication console behind her chirped urgently. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo's voice cut through the silence. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the diplomatic vessel Olive Branch. They're requesting immediate assistance." Elena turned sharply, her military training taking over. The Olive Branch had been sent 3 months ago to establish first contact with an advanced civilization that had been observing Earth from beyond the Kuiper Belt. "What's their status?" "They're returning ahead of schedule. Captain Chen reports they've made contact with representatives from something called the Celestial Governance Assembly." "Ma'am, he sounds frightened." Elena moved to the console, her heart racing. Captain David Chen was a veteran diplomat who had negotiated peace treaties in the worst conflict zones on Earth. If he was frightened, humanity had reason to worry. "Open the channel." The screen flickered to life, showing Chen's pale face. Behind him, the bridge of the Olive Branch looked intact, but his crew moved with obvious tension. "Captain Reyes, we need to speak with the Global Defense Council immediately. What we encountered out there changes everything." "What happened, David?" Chen glanced over his shoulder before leaning closer to the camera. "We met them." "The assembly?" "Elena, they're not explorers or scientists looking for peaceful exchange. They're tax collectors. They've been watching us since we launched our first satellites, waiting for us to develop faster than light capability. Now that we have, they say we owe them tribute for existing in their territory." Elena felt ice form in her stomach. "Tribute? What kind of tribute?" 20% of Earth's annual resources. That includes food, minerals, technology, and people. They want 2 billion humans relocated to work in their industrial complexes across the galaxy. They call it the Development Contribution Tax. Every species pays it. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Elena forced herself to breathe slowly, maintaining her composure. "Are they threatening us?" "They don't see it as a threat. They see it as stating facts. They have a fleet of 800 warships waiting at the edge of our solar system. If we refuse, they'll take what they want by force. We have 48 hours to begin compliance procedures." Before Elena could respond, a new alarm sounded throughout the station. The long-range sensors had detected multiple objects entering the solar system at impossible speeds. Within seconds, the tactical display showed them clearly. Hundreds of massive vessels, each one dwarfing Earth's largest space stations, had positioned themselves in a perfect blockade formation around the outer planets. "They followed you," Elena said quietly. Chen nodded grimly. "They wanted to make sure we understood they were serious." "Captain, I've seen their technology. Their weapons. We can't fight them. No military in human history has faced odds like this. Get back to Earth safely, David. We'll handle this." Elena closed the channel and immediately opened a priority line to Geneva. Within minutes, she was speaking directly with General Robert Kamani, head of the Global Defense Council. The general's weathered face filled the screen, his expression grim but controlled. "I've been briefed on the situation, Captain. The Assembly has already sent a formal communication to every government on Earth. They're quite thorough in their demands." "What are we going to do, sir?" "Right now, we're going to listen to what they have to say. An Assembly representative is requesting permission to address the Global Defense Council in person. We've agreed to meet them in 6 hours at the United Nations headquarters in New York." Elena felt her jaw tighten. "Sir, with respect, meeting with them suggests we're considering their demands. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with, Captain. Keep your station on high alert. Monitor their fleet movements. If anything changes, I want to know immediately." The general paused, his expression softening slightly. "Elena, I know what you're thinking. Trust me, we're not rolling over, but we need to buy time." The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts. She returned to the observation deck and stared at the distant points of light that represented the assembly fleet. They had come expecting submission. They had come believing humanity would surrender without question. Just like every other species they had encountered, they were about to learn how wrong they were. 6 hours later, the main chamber of the United Nations building was filled to capacity. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in tense silence as a being unlike anything humanity had ever imagined walked through the massive doors. The assembly representative called itself Quelvor, and its appearance was both beautiful and terrifying. Its body seemed to shift between solid and liquid states, covered in crystalline plates that refracted light into rainbow patterns. It had no visible face, yet somehow conveyed an expression of absolute superiority. General Kimani stood as the designated speaker for humanity. Beside him sat Dr. Amara Okafor, Earth's leading xenobiologist, and Ambassador Liu Wei, who had spent his career preparing for this exact scenario, even though most people thought first contact was centuries away. "Welcome to Earth," Kimani said formally. "We appreciate you coming to address us directly." Quelvor's voice emanated from everywhere and nowhere, translated directly into the minds of everyone present through technology that made human communication devices seem like children's toys. "Your appreciation is noted but irrelevant. I am here to clarify the terms of your species' integration into the Celestial Governance Assembly. You have been observed for approximately 73 of your years. Your technological development has reached the minimum threshold for contribution. You will now fulfill your obligations." Ambassador Liu leaned forward. "Our understanding is that you're requesting significant resources and population transfers. Can you explain the purpose of these contributions?" "The Assembly maintains order across 472 star systems. This requires resources. All member species contribute according to their capabilities. Your contribution has been calculated based on your population, resources, and technological level. The terms are non-negotiable." Dr. Okafor spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "You're asking for 2 billion people. Where would they be sent? What would they do? Would they be allowed to return to Earth? They would be assigned to assembly facilities based on their aptitudes. Return is not part of the standard agreement. Your species reproduces at a sufficient rate to replace the contributed population within 2 generations." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. The assembly wasn't asking for workers. They were asking for slaves who would never see their home again. General Kimani stood slowly, his military bearing evident in every movement. "Let me make sure I understand correctly. You want us to hand over 2 billion human beings, along with 1/5 of everything we produce in exchange for the privilege of not being attacked. Is that accurate?" "Your phrasing implies coercion. The Assembly simply enforces the natural order of galactic civilization. Advanced species guide and protect younger species. Younger species contribute to the collective good. This system has maintained peace for over 11,000 years. Peace for whom?" Kimani asked. "For the species being taken from their homes? Or peace for the assembly that profits from their labor?" For the first time, Quelvor seemed to hesitate. "Your emotional response is noted. However, emotion does not alter reality. You have 60 days to begin compliance procedures. Failure to comply will result in enforcement actions. The assembly has never failed to integrate a species. You will not be the first exception." "Then let me be clear," Kimani said, his voice carrying the weight of his 40 years of military service. "Humanity rejects your terms completely. We will not surrender our people. We will not submit to your authority. If you want Earth's resources, you'll have to take them by force." The chamber erupted in a mixture of gasps and applause. Quelvor's crystalline plates rippled with what might have been surprise or anger. "You do not comprehend what you are refusing. The Assembly has 800 warships in your system. Your entire military capability consists of perhaps 300 vessels, most of which are designed for planetary defense and short-range operations. Resistance is mathematically impossible." "Maybe," Kimani acknowledged, "but humanity didn't crawl out of caves and build a civilization by accepting impossible odds. We've faced extinction events, ice ages, plagues, and countless wars. We're still here. If you think we'll just hand over billions of our people without a fight, you don't understand humans at all." Quelvor's form rippled again. "Your species has 60 days. We will not extend this deadline. When it expires, enforcement begins with your largest population centers. The Assembly recommends you use this time to prepare your people for transition, rather than futile resistance." The being turned and left without waiting for a response. As soon as the chamber doors closed, chaos erupted. Diplomats argued, military leaders demanded action plans, and scientists frantically discussed potential defensive technologies. Kimani raised his hand for silence. When the room finally quieted, he spoke with absolute conviction. "Get me Colonel Sofia Martinez at Project Sentinel. Tell her it's time to activate." Ambassador Liu looked confused. "Project Sentinel? I've never heard of that program." "That's because it's been classified above top secret for the last 20 years, Kimani explained. "After the discovery of potentially habitable worlds in nearby systems, some of us started asking uncomfortable questions. What if we weren't alone? What if whoever we met wasn't friendly?" Project Sentinel was established to answer those questions with preparation instead of hope. Dr. Okafor's eyes widened. "You've been building weapons? Defenses for 20 years? "We've been doing more than building," Kimani said grimly. "We've been innovating. The Assembly thinks we're primitive because our ships are slower and our weapons are less advanced. They're measuring us by their standards. That's their first mistake." Within hours, classified facilities across Earth, the Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt received activation codes. Scientists and engineers who had spent 2 decades working in secret suddenly found their projects receiving unlimited resources and priority status. Colonel Sofia Martinez, a brilliant tactician who had never fought a single battle, became the most important military officer in human history. She stood in the central command center of Project Sentinel's main facility, hidden inside the asteroid Psyche. Around her, hundreds of displays showed the Assembly fleet's positions, Earth's defensive assets, and something else, something the Assembly didn't know existed. "Tell me we're ready," General Kimani said through the secure communication channel. Martinez allowed herself a tight smile. "We're ready, sir. The Assembly is about to learn that humans don't just fight with ships and weapons. We fight with every advantage we can create, every trick we can devise, and every ounce of determination we possess. They wanted to see humanity's contribution to galactic civilization. They're about to get one." In orbit around Earth, Captain Elena Reyes received new orders from the Global Defense Council. Her station and crew were now part of the largest military operation humanity had ever attempted. As she looked at the tactical displays showing the Assembly's overwhelming force, she felt something unexpected. Not fear, but anticipation. The Assembly had given Earth 60 days to surrender. Humanity would use every single one of those days to show them why humans had never accepted chains from anyone. The countdown had begun, and the galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. Humanity was going to fight back. The Defiance commander, Jackson Martinez, sat in the war room deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, studying holographic displays that showed the entire solar system. Red markers indicated Assembly fleet positions. Blue markers showed human defensive assets. The red outnumbered the blue by nearly 3-1, but Jackson wasn't focused on the numbers. He was focused on the patterns. "They're positioned exactly where military doctrine says they should be," he observed to his tactical team. "Blockade formation around the outer planets. Heavy concentration near Jupiter and Saturn. Lighter presence around Mars. It's textbook siege positioning." Lieutenant Commander Yuki Nakamura nodded from her station. "They've probably used this exact formation hundreds of times." "Why change what works?" "Because predictability is a weakness," Jackson replied. "Colonel Martinez taught me that. The enemy expects you to follow doctrine because that's what makes sense. The moment you stop making sense, you gain an advantage." Jackson's sister Sophia had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. While he had risen through conventional military ranks, she had been recruited into Project Sentinel fresh out of MIT, her doctorate in theoretical physics making her invaluable to humanity's secret defense initiative. Now her plans were being put into action across the solar system. The first phase began quietly. Small automated probes, launched years ago under the guise of scientific research missions, activated throughout the asteroid belt. Each probe was no larger than a refrigerator, equipped with minimal power systems and basic maneuvering thrusters. The Assembly's sensors had detected them years ago and dismissed them as harmless research equipment. That was their second mistake. Each probe began moving, using gravitational assists and minimal thrust to avoid detection. They weren't heading toward the Assembly fleet. They were positioning themselves in a 3-dimensional grid that encompassed the entire inner solar system. It took 11 days for all 7,000 probes to reach their designated coordinates. Meanwhile, on Earth, every government had mobilized completely. Factories that once produced consumer goods now manufactured military equipment. Scientific facilities shared research without restrictions. Nations that had been rivals for centuries worked together with a single purpose: Survival. The assembly watched all this preparation with what Quelvor described as amusing futility in his daily communications. He couldn't understand why humans were wasting resources on resistance when submission was inevitable. On day 15, the assembly made their first demonstration of force. 3 warships broke formation and approached Mars, where humanity's largest off-world colony housed 200,000 people. The colony's governor, Chen Wei, received a simple message: evacuate immediately or be destroyed. Chen Wei's response was equally simple: we're not leaving. Captain Elena Reyes watched from Horizon Watch as the 3 assembly warships took up positions around Mars. Her orders were clear: observe and document, but do not engage. Every instinct screamed at her to do something, but she trusted that there was a larger plan in motion. The assembly ships opened fire simultaneously, their energy weapons striking the dome cities that housed Mars Colony. The protective shields installed years ago by Project Sentinel flared brilliant blue as they absorbed the impacts. The weapons were powerful, far beyond anything humanity could produce, but the shields held. For 30 seconds, the assembly ships poured energy into the Martian defenses. Then they stopped, clearly confused. Their weapons should have vaporized the domes instantly. Instead, the colonists remained safe behind barriers that shouldn't exist according to assembly intelligence about human technology. That confusion lasted exactly long enough for Phase 2 to begin. The 7,000 probes throughout the inner solar system activated simultaneously. Each one began broadcasting on a specific frequency, creating an interference pattern that covered millions of cubic kilometers of space. The assembly fleet suddenly found their sensors showing contradictory information. Ships appeared in 6 different locations at once. Phantom readings suggested thousands of human vessels where none existed. Communication between assembly ships became unreliable as the interference disrupted their coordination. It's working, Yuki said excitedly from her station. The interference grid is completely scrambling their tactical networks. Jackson allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before issuing his next orders. Signal all ships. Operation Hornet's Nest is go. Throughout the solar system, humanity's actual military assets began moving. They didn't attack the assembly fleet directly. Instead, they targeted the one thing the assembly had never considered defending: their supply chain. The assembly fleet required enormous amounts of resources to maintain 800 warships. They had established automated mining operations on several outer system asteroids and moons, processing facilities on Titan, and fuel depots near Neptune. These installations were lightly defended because the assembly never imagined anyone would be foolish enough to attack them while outgunned 3-to-1 human. Strike teams hit 15 different supply installations within a 6-hour window. They used fast attack ships that accelerated to incredible speeds, fired their weapons, and retreated before the assembly could respond. The mining operations were destroyed. The processing facilities were crippled. The fuel depots exploded in brilliant flashes that could be seen from Earth. Quelvor's response came within hours, broadcast to every communication device on Earth. Your attacks on infrastructure installations will not save you. They merely delay the inevitable while costing human lives. We offer one final chance for peaceful compliance. Reject this offer, and we will begin systematic reduction of your major population centers. General Kimani's response was broadcast just as widely. You came to our home expecting us to surrender our people without resistance. You measured our worth by our technology and found us wanting. But you forgot to measure our determination. You forgot to measure our creativity. You forgot that humans are most dangerous when we're protecting our families. Come and take what you want, if you can. We'll be waiting. The Battle of the Asteroid Belt began 3 days later. The assembly fleet, frustrated by continued hit-and-run attacks and sensor interference, decided to advance toward Earth in force. 400 warships moved in a coordinated formation, their shields synchronized to provide maximum protection. It was an unstoppable armada by any conventional military assessment. They never reached Earth. As the fleet entered the asteroid belt, the human trap sprang closed. What the assembly had dismissed as random space debris was actually a carefully constructed minefield. Thousands of modified asteroids, moved into position over months using minimal thrust that avoided detection, suddenly activated high-powered engines. The asteroids accelerated toward the assembly fleet at impossible velocities, each one following a precisely calculated trajectory. The assembly ships opened fire, destroying hundreds of incoming rocks, but there were too many. The asteroids had been hollowed out and filled with nuclear devices, conventional explosives, and kinetic penetrators. When the first asteroid struck, an assembly battleship, the explosion lit up the solar system. The ship's shields absorbed most of the energy, but the kinetic impact sent it spinning out of formation. Then the second asteroid hit, and the third. Within minutes, the organized fleet formation had collapsed into chaos as ships maneuvered desperately to avoid the incoming barrage. That's when the human fleet attacked for real. 300 ships emerged from hiding positions throughout the belt, behind larger asteroids, in the shadows of Ceres, tucked into canyons on Vesta. They were smaller than assembly warships, less advanced, less powerful. But they had been designed by engineers who understood one fundamental truth. You don't need to be stronger than your enemy if you're smart enough to make strength irrelevant. Human ships carried weapons the assembly had never encountered. Rail. Guns that fired solid projectiles at relativistic speeds, unaffected by energy shields designed to stop laser and plasma weapons. Electromagnetic pulse missiles that disabled electronics without needing to penetrate armor. Cyber warfare packages that infiltrated assembly computer systems through their own communication networks. Captain Elena Reyes led Squadron 7-12, fast attack ships that had been held in reserve until this moment. Her target was the assembly command ship, a massive dreadnought that coordinated the entire fleet's movements. Her orders were simple. Disable it. All ships, this is Reyes. Execute pattern Delta. Remember, we only get one pass at this, so make it count. Her squadron accelerated toward the dreadnought, their smaller size allowing greater maneuverability. Assembly defensive weapons tracked them, but the sensor interference made accurate targeting nearly impossible. Half the shots missed completely. The others were absorbed by ablative armor designed to sacrifice outer layers while protecting the ship's core. Elena's ship fired its entire payload at point-blank range, 6 electromagnetic pulse missiles and a dozen kinetic penetrators. The Dow's missiles detonated against the dreadnought's shields, creating cascading electrical disruptions. In the microseconds before the shields could compensate, the penetrators punched through, tearing into the command ship's communication arrays. The dreadnought didn't explode. It didn't even lose power. But it stopped coordinating the fleet, and, in a battle involving hundreds of ships, that loss of coordination was devastating. All across the asteroid belt, human captains pressed their advantages. They fought with a ferocity that shocked the assembly forces. When human ships were damaged beyond repair, their crews didn't surrender. They set collision courses with assembly vessels, turning themselves into missiles. When ammunition ran low, human pilots rammed enemy ships with their own vessels, sacrificing themselves to protect Earth. The assembly had superior technology, superior numbers, and superior firepower. But they had never fought an enemy willing to trade ship for ship, life for life without hesitation. They had never encountered a species that viewed survival without freedom as worse than death itself. After 18 hours of continuous combat, the assembly fleet withdrew to the outer system. They had lost 96 ships destroyed, and another 150 damaged. The human fleet had lost 170 ships, but they had achieved something impossible. They had stopped an unstoppable force. Quelvor's next transmission was different in tone. The superiority was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect. Your species fights with irrational determination. You accept casualties that no rational civilization would tolerate. We did not anticipate this level of resistance. General Kimani responded from the same United Nations chamber where this had all begun. That's because you measured us wrong. You saw our technology and assumed we were weak. You saw our small fleet and assumed we would surrender. You made the same mistake that countless empires throughout human history have made. You confused capacity for violence with willingness to use it. What do you propose? Quelvor asked, and those 4 words represented a fundamental shift in the relationship between humanity and the assembly. We propose you leave our solar system and never return, Kimani said. We propose you go back to your assembly and tell them that Earth is not available for exploitation. We propose that if you want a relationship with humanity, it will be as equals, not as masters and servants." There was a long pause. When Quelvor finally responded, his tone carried something new: uncertainty. "The Assembly Council must deliberate on this development. We will maintain our current position while they decide. However, I am authorized to inform you that continued combat serves neither species' interests. A temporary ceasefire will be observed." Over the following weeks, negotiations began in earnest. The Assembly Council, accustomed to easy victories and automatic compliance, found themselves dealing with a species that refused to be intimidated. Reports from the battlefield had spread throughout Assembly territory, and other subjugated species were asking uncomfortable questions. If humans could fight back successfully, why couldn't they? The final agreement took 40 days to negotiate. Earth would not join the Assembly. Earth would not pay tribute. Earth would maintain complete sovereignty over its territory and people. In exchange, humanity agreed to share specific technologies the Assembly lacked. Ironically, the very weapons and tactics that had been used to defeat them. Colonel Sofia Martinez stood beside her brother Jackson in the command center, watching as the Assembly fleet finally departed the solar system. "We did it," she said quietly. "We actually did it." "We survived," Jackson corrected. "That's different from winning. They'll be back someday. Maybe not them, but someone else. The galaxy knows about us now." "Let them come," Elena Reyes said, joining them after returning from the asteroid belt. "We've proven humanity won't accept chains from anyone. Every species in the Assembly saw what happened here. We didn't just fight for Earth. We fought for the idea that freedom matters more than peace, that dignity matters more than safety." General Kamani's final address to Earth was broadcast from the same United Nations building where Quelvor had delivered his ultimatum. "Today, humanity stands at a crossroads. We have proven we can defend ourselves, but we have also learned we are not alone in the universe. The galaxy is vast, filled with civilizations both friendly and hostile. Our choice now is how we move forward. Do we retreat into isolation, protecting ourselves behind walls of fear? Or do we reach out to those other species who have suffered? Under the Assembly's rule, do we share what we've learned? Do we help others fight for the same freedom we fought for? I say we reach out. I say we show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our unwillingness to accept injustice, whether it affects us or others. The Assembly came here expecting easy prey. They found something they never anticipated, a species that believes freedom is worth any price. Let that be Earth's contribution to galactic civilization. Not tribute, not submission, but the simple radical idea that every sentient being deserves to choose their own destiny. 6 months later, 15 species formally withdrew from the Assembly, citing Earth's example as inspiration. The Assembly Council, facing the possibility of complete collapse, began implementing reforms. The tribute system was abolished. Subjugated species were granted representation. The entire structure of galactic civilization began to shift. And at the center of it all, a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star had done the impossible. They had fought back. They had survived. They had changed the galaxy. Captain Elena Reyes looked out at the stars from Horizon Watch and smiled. Humanity had passed its first test. Whatever came next, they would face it the same way they had faced the Assembly, with courage, creativity, and an unshakable determination to remain free. The galaxy had expected Earth to submit. Instead, Earth had shown them what humans do best: we fight back.